All right, hear me out. Today is Sunday, January the 11th, 2026. This is So Says Mr. Thunder. I'm Mr. Thunder, and this is the podcast. If this is your first time coming, I appreciate you for making it here. Somehow you heard about it, and you're here now, so appreciate you. For those of you that been rocking with me since the beginning, you know how I feel. It ain't nothing but love. Because this whole thing ain't about me. It's about you, and I'm just doing what I believe God has called me to do. So with that being said, um, I'm constantly trying to improve my knowledge base and wisdom based upon this thing we call life. This this journey that everybody's on, that everybody's looking for answers and things like that. But as I say, you don't know until you do. And when you do know, that's when it becomes wisdom. So in doing so, I kind of just, go about my life as I see fit. And sometimes, I run into situations where I need to solve problems. A lot of people call me and talk to me about their problems because, I'm a problem solver by nature, but I'm also operating in my anointing, and I don't take that for granted. But the crazy part about it is usually when people are having conversations and they talking about what's going on, issues that they have, and it's usually something they're either going through, somebody they're dealing with, or a situation they in. 9 times out of 10, they looking for some direction, and it always it always kind of ends up with a solution of removing yourself from it. Um, like I like I tell y'all, I moved to Houston about 14 years ago on hope, faith, more faith than hope, into a situation where, I built a whole new family, a whole new life, things like that. Met a lot of new people. Now, my entire life, I'm growing up, I'm really not belonging where I'm supposed to be at. So I always had to figure out how to be comfortable in these situations. But this was a time in my life where I was able to make a way for myself, create the life that I wanted to live. And in doing so, you have relationships and friendships and connections that, eventually are tied to people that you consider to be in your circle or friend, things like that. Because I don't have a lot of family, people I fuck with. And when I say fuck with them, I mean I'm available to. Um, you know, it's a family I built. So I take my part in it very seriously. But sometimes if I feel like the situation isn't conducive to something that I'm trying to do, sometimes I gotta remove myself from it, move away from it. It don't have to be anything anybody did, anything that happened. It just may be a different way of moving. And sometimes that rubs people the wrong way. And we all go through it because these are just conversations that I constantly am feeling sometimes when it comes to, getting older, making decisions and things like that. So I like to have real honest conversations. But in those conversations, I also like to look for solutions by educating myself on certain things. So today I want to talk about the method of problem solving, which requires you to subtract to add. Now, how do I put this? Without being a mathematician, I went and looked for an answer of why that seemed to be the solution to a lot of decision making that people needed to do, or I needed to do, or as I said, I was in leadership, so sometimes I've had to say this to people. But I looked it up, and it is by definition Google. It says that the statement of subtract to add is a powerful mental math strategy that turns a subtraction problem into an easier addition problem. Asking the question becomes now, how many more do I need? So the example given is, instead of saying 7 minus 5 is what, you say 5 plus what equals 7. So it's requiring you to remove part of the equation rather than using subtraction to get the answer. Now, what do I mean by that? Obviously, subtraction in math is 7 minus 5. You do the math, that equals what? Do the math, right? But if you say 5 plus what equals 7, something is missing. That's part of the equation, but not the answer. So I looked at it a little bit more deeper, and basically subtraction is the same as removing something from the problem. The problem with subtraction is that usually people become focused on what the subtraction is rather than the initial statement of how many more do I need. So how many more do I need? So I looked into that a little bit further. Subtraction can also be associated with absence and isolation. Now, follow me here. I looked a little bit deeper into it, and I listened to, and I reference sometimes, Daryl C. Bronner. He gave a sermon entitled "The Gift of Absence." It's what happens when you give the blessing of your absence to what's causing you stress. So he talks about how God will isolate you, and in the isolation, he may put a little wrinkle in your plan. So we're back to problem solving. All comes down to the ability to subtract. So he subtracts you from the situation, he removes you from that situation in order to tell you how he can add to your life. So by isolating, and I'll leave a link in the bottom of the video or whatever of this sermon. But he basically likes to also speak acronyms, and he uses isolated. He talks about I is when you have the insight rises, something comes to your attention. S is that strength becomes simplified, meaning you easily identify what your strengths and weaknesses are. Talks about O being obstacles start to shrink, meaning the problems or what's in your way starts to become smaller. Leadership sharpens, meaning you start making good decisions. Your attention refocuses. T for trust. Trust takes root, meaning now you have trust in that process that you're going through right now, what you're about to do, and the decisions that you make. And then he says energy emerges. He gives you the ability to continue, to move forward, and then the directions become clear. So I would say if you have an opportunity, definitely listen to that. It explains how God will subtract you from a situation by getting you to look at the positive, that it's not really a subtraction problem, it's an addition problem. It's a mental strategy by definition. But sometimes he's got to isolate you for you to figure out that answer. And this can go for people, places, or things. And we all know that the power is in the tongue, and people, places, and things by definition is a noun, which is a part of the speech that gives the people, places, or things a name that allows you to identify what that is. So sometimes when you strengthen the math problem, you also strengthen the English problem so that you can become more educated and well versed in what to say and what to require of yourself. So that when you get in front of the math, you realize that even though it's a subtraction problem, the easiest way to solve a subtraction problem is to convert it into an addition problem. So how do you remove yourself from this situation? How do you isolate yourself so that God can speak to you and do the math on what makes sense? Because sometimes the math ain't mathing, as they're saying. Just like my Green Bay Packers, the math ain't mathing. So I had to remove myself from that situation. Until next time, this has been So Says Mr. Thunder. I'm Mr. Thunder. I sure do appreciate you for coming by and just spending a little time with me. Hopefully this helped you in some kind of way or pointing you in a direction to where you're thinking now. You're either thinking about something I said or something I said caused you to think about something else. Either way, this is all bigger than me. I share information and wisdom that I receive through seeking counsel. And a lot of what I do is solve problems. And in order to solve problems, sometimes I gotta solve my own, which causes me to isolate myself and understand that sometimes I gotta subtract to add. So if I've added any value to you in any kind of way, I sure love to hear from you. For those of you who have been supportive and reached out and commented and even participated, man, this was nothing other than a conversation between me and my father years ago, and those along the line who have supported me up to this point. You just don't know how much it has taken for me to be able to stand before you and use the gift that God gave me in a way that He gave it to me for, to help others so that they can understand. You don't know until you do. Have you been in a situation where you feel like you don't understand why everything keeps getting pulled away, or you keep getting pulled away from something? You know what I'm saying? Things are going away. You're losing money. You're losing job. You're losing weight. You're losing relationships. You're losing businesses, whatever it may be. Do you feel like you have the power within yourself to isolate yourself to a point where God uses isolation to work through you by taking all the steps it requires to strengthen your ability to solve that problem when you're faced with a subtraction? If you like to participate, you got something to say about it, you got an opinion about it, you disagree, agree, whatever you got to say, whatever you want to say, I want to hear 10 minutes of your best. I sure do appreciate you once again. This has been So Says Mr. Thunder. I'm Mr. Thunder. I'm a Native American of this country, and there ain't a damn thing you can do about it. If you'd like to participate in this and want to be a part of it, just reach out to me on the Instagram page, So Says Mr. Thunder. Make sure you subscribe to the channel on YouTube, and this can be found on all podcast platforms. Again, I appreciate you. I love you, because if it weren't for you, this wouldn't exist. Until next time, I'll holler. Peace.